In 2015, we saw the beginning of the Ninjago magazine, a line of magazines that provide us with a lot of different aspects in terms of both the Ninjago community and also Ninjago minifigures. But whilst this general premise has remained the same over the years, we've actually seen an interesting evolution in how they actually provide certain aspects of it. And of course, knowing my channel, I'm mainly going to cover one of the aspects. But in this video, I'm going to look over the Ninjago magazines and show the evolution of how things have actually gone when it does come to these magazines. And ultimately, figure out whether or not they're a good or bad thing when it does come to Ninjago. But before I do talk about it, I want to ask one thing in particular. If the Ninjago magazines are in a country that you currently live in, do you pick them up? Are they something that you buy every issue of? Or is it something that you may pick up depending on the aspects that you can look at for it? Honestly, I'm very curious to know how popular these truly are, because I, for one, am very much invested in these magazines, and I want to know if anyone else is the same. But sit back, relax, and let's talk about the fun world of Ninjago magazines. So let's go through what you actually get when you do purchase one of these magazines, because for the most part it has remained fairly consistent. Of course, like I said, it began in 2015, so we've had them as of the time of filming for about 11 years. One of the first things that we've always had within these magazines is actually just simple little activities, such as guess the ninja, or guess the location, or other things like that. Just fun little activities just to kind of test your Ninjago trivia in a way, and just to entertain your brain for a few minutes while you're actually looking through these magazines. Honestly, they're very welcomed additions, especially for the younger audience. I think they're really fun and just simple little things that you can do to keep you engaged when it does come to Ninjago. The next thing you do tend to get in these magazines are actually double-sided posters. They are A4 sheets that do have certain art depicting certain seasons or certain characters. It ultimately does depend on when the issue did come out. For example, if you were to buy one of the first issues that ever released of the Ninjago magazine, you probably would have gotten an issue related to Possession or Tournament of Elements, for example, because that was the season at the time. Again, very nice little welcomed additions, and you can definitely tell when someone has been getting the magazines because just simply of the art. There have been many times where I've seen Ninjago posters and have immediately identified them as the magazine ones just because of how cool they look. The next thing that you do tend to get is actually to go even further into trivia, where you have activities where you have to guess the answer yourself. You also do get sections that you do actually get to learn things about the show with as well. You get to learn about certain sets or certain characters. You get dedicated pages that actually just get to teach you additional things when it does come to Ninjago products. I really like these things. I mean, it's the entire basis of my channel. I love little facts and little bits of information when it does come to the show. So the fact that the comments have reflected it for the last 11 years has definitely been really cool to see. And the last of the smaller things I wanted to mention was actually the dedicated comic series. For the last 11 years, they've actually been doing their own little line of Ninjago stories. Sometimes they've been completely separate and doing their own thing. Sometimes they do take place within or between certain seasons. I mean, for the most part, they are identified as non-canon material, and that is completely fine, but it is just really fun little hypothetical Ninjago stories. I think they're just really fun to read through, and I definitely do think there's a level of charm to it. We've also seen some unique things actually do come from these comics. The main thing I think of is the climber version of Wildfire. I really like those little things, and I like to see incarnations on certain suits that certain characters didn't get. It's just fun little hypothetical what ifs, and I just think again they're a very welcomed addition. But with all of those little smaller things that you do get within those magazines, it does make for good value. Remember, the average Ninjago magazine, at least in the UK, is about £5 to £6. And I really do like that. I think it's a fantastic value. And all of those little things are definitely good for it. But the thing is that one of the biggest things that do come with the Ninjago magazine is most definitely the addition of the minifigures. And those are the main thing I want to talk about when it does come to the evolution of these magazines. Because a staple of the Ninjago magazine is without a doubt the addition of the minifigure. There are also the odd occasion where we get something that isn't a minifigure, like a little standalone build, but for the most part, we do get an incarnation of a Ninjago minifigure. And the thing is that it has gone through some interesting waves over the course of the years. But like I said, most people buy these magazines for that minifigure, so it's interesting to see how they've gone along within recent time. But you may be wondering, what actually is the evolution when it does come to the minifigures? Have they gone through some form of significant change? And to an extent that they have. The thing is that when Ninjago first started out with these magazines, the minifigure selection was good, but also not the best if you were a completionist. For example, the first few issues that we ever got of these magazines were including versions of the rebooted Ninja, but they were coming with certain differences. For example, the third issue we ever got, we actually did get a version of rebooted Cole, but he came with golden shoulder pads and he came with a flat black ZX hood. So it wasn't accurate in any minifigure in any sort of sense, and you couldn't exactly make it accurate either. He didn't come with his hairpiece, for example, or anything of the sort. So you were getting a minifigure, and that was really cool, just not something that could go next to completed versions of the rebooted Ninja. There were the odd anomaly. For example, you could get an Anachondrite Cultist completed, and you could also get a Ghost Warrior completed around this time. But for the most part, and what the main attraction of these magazines were, which were the Ninja, you just simply weren't getting accurate versions, and that carried through for most of the rebooted Ninja. But the thing is that after those ones were done, they actually did move on to the Zukin Ninja, or the Jungle Robe Ninja, and again they carried on with the trend of not being accurate. For example, you could get a version of Jungle Kai, but he came with a half mask, and he came with a whole assortment of very strange looking weapons. And that was the other major thing. You were getting characters that just didn't really come with anything accurate. It just felt like an amalgamation of pieces, and it didn't really have any sort of cohesive nature to it. But again, that wasn't necessarily bad. There were still anomalies in here that were quite good within the early days, such as a hooded version of Klaus with elemental pieces. I think that was a really good addition, and definitely one of the better magazines, and I think one that a lot of people did actually get. And like I said, there were other little ones like Pirate Warriors you could get, or you could get Ronin with unique arrow blades. Those were really cool and really nice additions when it did come to these magazines, and it was definitely the first showing of what we actually could get when it did come to these Ninjago magazines. The last thing was, by all accounts, technically exclusive pieces. The main one I think of is the fact that when they did Titanium Zane, they didn't include the elemental symbol on his hood, and this was the only way to get the silver titanium hood without anything on it being completely plain. So they were value to an extent, just in a very weird sense. But all of this did just continue to carry on. Like I said, just random inaccurate versions of Ninjago minifigures with very weird assortment of weapons. It carried through Day of the Departed, where we actually did get most of the ninja within this magazine run, but all of them again continued with the ZX shoulder pads. It was a decent addition, because even though you weren't getting completed versions, you were getting pieces that were difficult to get your hands on. You could get the new Zane face, for example, or you could get versions of the ninja that were just in the more expensive sets. It's just, again, you had to deal with these little caveats that didn't make them completely accurate to the show. But for a lot of people, this was just a really good way of doing things. And honestly, I understand why a lot of people were getting them. Just personally for me, I wasn't overly interested. By this point in time, I got the Ronin, I got the Klaus, I got those little ones, but just the ninja ones weren't really interesting me. But that all actually did change in 2017. 2017 saw a really weird shift in terms of how they handled the Ninjago magazines, more specifically, Hands of Time. The thing is that when those minifigures were starting to get into these magazines, I was expecting the same that we got before, but that actually never really happened, and it all began with the version of Cole in the Hands of Time magazine. This version of Cole was completed. There was nothing wrong with him whatsoever. Yes, he came with a couple size, which was a little strange, but honestly, I wasn't mad at that whatsoever. But it was a completed version of Cole, and that was really cool to actually see, and definitely did have my intrigue. So I picked it up, and by all accounts, it was a good time. I bought some extra RX arms from the wave before, and I attached them on for my extra Cole, and it was great. And they didn't stop there. The magazines just entered a new kind of dimension when it came to these new additions in terms of minifigures, and actually really solid ones of that, because not only were we still getting completed ninja, we were getting exclusive prints in a very cheap way. For example, the issue with Kai, it came with the new head print, the new smiling, and then the other side with the fire eyes. Bear in mind, that was exclusive to the Dragon Forge, and it made that version of Kai extremely easy to get your hands on, and to this very day, that version of Kai is definitely easy to get, whereas Nia, who also had an exclusive face in the Dragon Forge, is much more expensive, because she didn't come in those magazines. The other main ninja that we got it for the Hands of Time minifigures was actually Zane. He also did come with a fully completed version of himself, also having ice elemental pieces. And honestly, all of this was just to go to show that there was something going on here. There was something new in terms of what we were getting in terms of these magazines. And honestly, I was very much intrigued. Getting half of the ninja in a very cheap way was absolutely fantastic to behold. And I, for one, was excited with what they did next. And what they did for a few years was, Well, a little bit disappointing actually. Unfortunately, when the movie released, we actually did get a couple of the Woo Crew versions of the ninja, which was fine, but then coming to season 8, we were getting versions of the ninja without shoulder pads, Nia came without her skirt piece, the ninja's symbols were removed. It was kind of just a bit of a bad time. They also did put a heavy emphasis on the villain minifigures as well. We were getting a lot of the Sons of Garmadon, we were getting most of the Dragon Hunters in season 9. We were actually not really doing all too well when it did come to the magazines for a fair few years, and it just continued on. During the time of the release of season 11, we were actually getting still the season 8 ninja, but with the legacy hoods instead. It was just kind of a shame, and I'm not saying that they weren't going out completely all out in any of them. I will say that there was a few magazines where they did well. We got one with Iron Baron, we got one with a younger version of Wu. Those were pretty good and honestly very much worth the money, but it's just for a while they kind of went back to what they were doing before the Points of Hand to Time. So where it felt like we were actually getting a change, we kind of just didn't. But again, everything changed after that once more. Because after this portion of time where they seemingly went back to how they were before Hands of Time, they just immediately bounced right back. Season 11 minifigures were hitting the magazines, and we got most of the Season 11 ninja actually fully completed within these magazines. We got Zane, we got Jay, we got Nia, we got Cole. We got all of them fully ready to go out of the box. And that was honestly fantastic. The Prime Empire ninja, whilst not having shoulder pads, they were still coming mostly complete, which was a decent little addition. We also then got into the Master of the Mountain era, where we got the Spinjitzu Burst Ninja fully complete, and also a fully completed version of Vangelis. That was honestly a really nice addition to really get. I will say, the island wasn't the best. The closest we got to accuracy was Lloyd, and he was missing a shoulder pad. But again, just a little weird face, because we go into Seabound, and again we got most of the ninja fully complete in their scuba outfits. The only one who didn't was Nia, and you can see that price reflected on Bricklink. But the thing is that still, regardless of that, Lloyd, Cole, Jay, they were all coming fully complete. Kai was in there as well. We also got Benthamar at one point. It was honestly fantastic and a very good way to get your hands on these minifigures. And honestly, even from that point onwards, it just continued to get better. Crystallize was giving us mostly completed minifigures as well. The only one we didn't get fully complete was Fugitive Lloyd, and that was because he didn't come with his full mask. But apart from that, you were getting the Golden Ninja fully complete, you were getting the Dragon Form Ninja fully complete, you were getting members of the Crystal Council complete as well. You could get Vangelis fully completed, you could get Esphira fully completed. It was a really good way to get your hands on these minifigures. You could get only Garmadon from this magazine as well, who was completely exclusive to a £100 set. Honestly, this was fantastic, and honestly a very good time when it did come to getting minifigures, because you could just buy these magazines as a complete alternative if you didn't like these bigger sets. Honestly, it was fantastic. But all of that is just to go to show that that's the best the magazines have ever been, right? Well, no. Turns out Dragons Rising wanted to go even better once more, and I'm gonna bring us now to present day, because this is the evolution. We went from minifigures that were incomplete with weird weapons to basically full lines of ninja suits within the magazines. When Dragons Rising hit, we actually found a new version of these magazine polybags. Season 1, for example, most of the ninja fully completed in their merch suits were coming out in these magazines. And it wasn't even just that. Whilst you could get Kai, you could get Lloyd, you could get Aaron, Sora, you could get Zane, all of them were coming fully complete in the polybag. You could also get the villains as well. You could get a fully completed Raz, you could get Imperium Warriors. It was absolutely amazing. Come season 2, they continued on and gave us every single version of the Climber Ninja within these polybags. Every single Climber Ninja. And in countries where the magazine doesn't exist, those are some fairly expensive outfits. So for them to be circulated like this when it does come to the magazine countries was absolutely fantastic to see. Because I'm not joking you could get every single Climber Ninja from a magazine. And it carried through to season 3. You could get Moro, you could get the Storm Ninja, you could get every single variant that you actually needed. You could get the Forbidden 5, you could get the Spectral Ninja, you could get Frack, a minifigure that again was exclusive to an £80 set. It was and still is absolutely fantastic. And honestly, I can't commend the fact that LEGO have just done this for us anymore. The most recent outing of the Ninjago magazine as of the time of filming is actually going to be the one that came with a fully completed version of Kerr. Honestly, this was a way you could have got it completely without having to spend a load of money to actually get it from the set itself. Honestly, again, just going to show that they've got this new system and it's most definitely working. And even now, we know of a few of magazines that are coming in the future, such as the Dragon Ninja from Season 4. So all of this is just going to show that LEGO have seriously streamlined these magazines and have made them honestly one of the best values you could have as a Ninjago fan. And I think that is the ultimate takeaway when it does come to this video. Like I said, it is the fun world of Ninjago magazines. Honestly, a lot of the aspects I've talked about in this video are absolutely amazing. Like I said, the trivia, the questions, the posters, the comic series that you can follow if you want to. All of them are amazing little aspects that do make the magazine worth it in of itself. But in recent time, they have taken a great stride in actually giving more value when it does come to these magazines. Having the addition of fully completed Dragon's Rising minifigures has been an absolute blessing on Ninjago fans. If you can't afford the bigger sets that come with the Forbidden 5, or if you couldn't get your hands on all of the Season 2 sets to get your hands on the Climber Ninja, the magazines were sat there waiting for you, and were giving you alternatives to get completed minifigures. And I, for one, absolutely adored that, and I think to this very day, they're one of the best values you do have when it does come to Ninjago collections, and definitely worth taking a look at once a month when a new one does drop. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't even mention the fact that sometimes they come with 2 minifigures. But that is where I'm going to leave it for today. And I want to know, like I said, do you buy the Ninjago magazines? Is it something that you've seen the value in? Or is it something that you just skip because you buy all the Ninjago sets? I'm very curious to know how you handle them. And also, if you're in a country where you don't have the magazines, would you want them to come to your country? Would you want to have access to these amazing editions and have amazing minifigures at a hand's reach? I'm very curious to know if there's something as good as I personally portray them to be. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. And if you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing. I love discussing Ninjago with more people. And if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you can become a channel member and join the legends on screen. And thank you to each and every single one of you. Your support means the absolute world to me. But like I said, that is about it for today, and take care. Okay,